The air in the throne chamber was heavy with incense and fear. Lyrea stood tall, draped in ceremonial silk, her gaze fixed ahead. She had trained since birth to carry the weight of her people's survival on her shoulders, and today that burden demanded a marriage to a beast. Her father's decision was final. The warlord Morvax would become her mate, and in exchange, her planet would be spared from annihilation. Morvax did not walk into the chamber. He loomed, a grotesque creature stitched together by cybernetic brutality and ancestral arrogance. He sneered through a mask that was more for terror than protection. His voice, thick and gravelly, cut across the silence like a jagged blade. Lyrea didn't flinch. She bowed, spoke the ancient vows, and sealed a deal that made her queen, but only in name. The Empire called it unity. She called it a leash. Later, in the imperial holding chambers deep beneath the war palace, she walked alone. Curiosity drew her there. She had heard whispers of a new acquisition, something rare, dangerous. A Terran, one of the last humans found alive after the Purge Wars. Her aides warned her to stay away. She dismissed them. The cell reeked of old blood and defiance. Inside sat the human, chained but not broken. He looked up slowly. His face bore bruises, but his eyes didn't plead. They assessed, judged. Lyrea met his gaze and felt a cold jolt of recognition. This was not a savage. This was a soldier, one who had survived worse than chains. She didn't speak. She observed. He did the same. Then he turned away, resting his head against the wall like her presence meant nothing. It shouldn't have stung, but it did. She left without a word, disturbed by the flicker of something dangerously human in herself. In the weeks that followed, Lyrea played the part. Ceremonies, appearances. She tolerated Morvax's boasts and ignored his leers. Her people praised her for saving them. The Empire paraded her as the ideal mate. But at night, she returned to the cell block, not for duty, for clarity. The human never begged, never raged. He listened when she spoke. He corrected her when she misunderstood Terran terms. He revealed nothing of military value, but she learned much from his silence. His name was Riven. Once, when she brought him water, he asked if she knew what freedom smelled like. She didn't answer. He said it smelled like rain on scorched earth. That night, Lyrea dreamed of storms. She studied classified files on Terrans. They were called apex anomalies, resilient, erratic, emotionally volatile. Too unpredictable to assimilate, too stubborn to break. Every major empire had tried. Most failed. Some feared them. The Empire exterminated them. Or so they believed. When she next visited Riven, she asked how he had survived. He said survival wasn't the goal, completing the mission was. The admission shocked her, not because it was bold, but because it was honest. She didn't expect that from a prisoner, or anyone in her world. Morvax grew impatient. He wanted heirs, control, and obedience. Lyrea gave him none of the three. She avoided him, citing illness. He demanded loyalty. She gave diplomacy. But in secret, she returned to the Terran, not because she trusted him, but because she no longer trusted anyone else. Riven once told her that he'd seen sons die and friends fade into vapor, that most races break under pressure. But humans don't break. They burn. She asked what that meant. He said burning was their way of becoming something more. Lyrea didn't understand, but she wanted to. She brought him a book, a relic from a Terran ship recovered after Purge. Poetry, though she didn't know it then. He smiled, truly smiled for the first time. He didn't thank her. He simply read a line aloud. "We are the ashes that remember the flame." Lyrea left the cell shaking, not from fear, from a sensation of something long dead awakening inside her. A week later, a riot broke out in the lower cities. Morvax ordered brutal suppression. Lyrea intervened. She calmed the crowd with words, not fire. Morvax accused her of weakness. She responded with silence. But the people began whispering, not about the monster she married, but about the queen who defied him. Morvax slapped her during a council meeting, before witnesses. She bled. She did not scream. She returned to the human, that night with a swollen eye. Riven did not ask what happened. He simply looked at her until the silence became unbearable. She asked why he didn't escape. He said there was nowhere to go. Not until something was worth staying for. She didn't answer, but she returned the next night and the next. Lirea smuggled in pieces small mechanical parts, outdated security keys. She said it was curiosity. Riven knew it was something else. He didn't smile this time. He accepted the gesture. Together, they began to map the prison structure. Not for escape, for leverage. When Lirea asked why he hadn't hated her, he said he did. At first. Then he saw her fight, not with weapons, but by surviving. That's what humans respect most, those who refuse to quit, even when losing. She told him the wedding was political, that her body was a banner, that she had no voice in her own life. Riven said she had one now. She needed only to use it. She whispered that she didn't know how. He told her to start small. One word, one choice, one refusal. That night, she denied Morvax's request to join him in the high chambers, publicly, in front of the entire court. The Empire gasped. Lirea smiled. Riven had told her that monsters rule through fear, but humans defy through example. She didn't understand the full meaning, but she began to embody it. The next morning, Morvax ordered Riven's execution. Lirea intervened. She claimed he was a cultural asset, too valuable for study to be discarded. The council agreed. Barely. Lirea visited Riven in chains again. She didn't tell him what she had done. He already knew. He simply said, "You chose? That's the beginning." The guard began to talk. The queen's visits were frequent. Too frequent. Rumors spread. Lirea became the center of attention again, but not for reasons the Empire approved of. She realized then that she didn't care. Her planet sent envoys. They begged her to continue the charade, to bear the warlord's heir, to protect them. She told them protection without dignity was slow death. They called her reckless. She accepted the title. She returned to Riven, told him everything. He didn't offer advice. He simply asked what she wanted. She didn't answer with words. She placed her palm against the barrier between them. He did the same. No vows. No oaths. Just contact. Silent. Searing. Human. Morvax confronted her days later. Drunk on his own myth. He accused her of betrayal, of sympathy for the Terran disease. She didn't deny it. She told him monsters don't understand love, only control. He struck her again. She struck back. The chamber guards didn't intervene. Not this time. They watched. They waited. Lirea stood, bloody but upright. She declared herself sovereign, not wife. A daughter of a world that had given enough. She claimed her right to command, to rule, to choose. The Empire didn't collapse. Not yet, but it blinked. And in that blink, the first spark of rebellion was born. Riven sat in his cell untouched, waiting. Lirea opened the door herself, not to free him, but to stand beside him, not as a queen, not as a savior, as an equal. And in that moment, the war truly began. Lirea didn't sleep after opening the cell. Neither did Riven. There was no celebration, no whispered promises, only an understanding. The next steps would be irreversible. She handed him a uniform, stolen from a fallen guard during the last riot. He dressed quickly, efficiently, every movement precise. Not a soldier preparing for war, but a survivor ready to move through a world that had already tried to kill him. The palace sensors were mapped. They moved silently through maintenance corridors and service shafts, past outdated surveillance zones. Lirea's codes gave them minutes, not immunity. Enough time to reach the chamber beneath the throne, where the Empire stored confiscated tech. Riven found what he needed within seconds. A modified neural spike. A field disruptor. Lirea found a stolen Terran pistol, long deactivated but reparable. She handed it to him. He nodded. They avoided the warlord's elite, avoided confrontation, until the west corridor. 3 guards. 1 recognized her. Riven acted first, non-lethal strikes. Efficient, bone-snapping. Lirea stared at him as he moved. Cold, clinical, silent. She had seen death before, but this wasn't execution. It was restraint, honed over years of holding back everything the Empire feared. They made it to the archives. Lirea accessed the deep systems. The truth was buried there. Planetary exploitation contracts, proof of the Empire's engineered famines, genetic purges ordered by Morvax himself. Riven uploaded everything to an old-world beacon hidden in his cell. It would transmit a pulse once outside interference was removed. They had everything: evidence, gear, purpose. The next challenge was escape. The outer defense grid was nearly impenetrable. But Lirea knew one flaw: the orbital lift, meant for cargo, rarely guarded inside. The corridor leading to it was long, exposed, no shadows to hide in. Riven scanned the floor plan, then the ceiling. He calculated angles, blind spots, distraction patterns. His mind worked like a weapon, not impulsive, surgical. They ran. 2 drones spotted them. Lirea staggered but didn't fall. Riven dragged her behind the central support beam and activated the spike. The EM blast shorted the nearest drone. The other fired blindly. Lirea shot it once, through its eye sensor. It dropped. They reached the lift. But Morvax waited at the top. He had expected a rebellion. Not from her, but from someone. His armor gleamed. His eyes burned. Behind him stood a squad of the Imperial Blackguard. They didn't raise their weapons. Not yet. Lirea stepped forward. She demanded passage. Morvax laughed. He called her naive, weak, broken by a pet human. He ordered her arrested. Riven raised a disruptor. Lirea raised her voice. She declared him a traitor to the Empire's core tenets, one who had violated balance, corrupted bloodlines, and endangered the throne. She cited ancient law. Her rank gave her right to challenge, not by duel, but by exposure. She activated the beacon. Across the skies, signal towers flared. The broadcast began. Planets far and wide, watching. The Blackguard froze. Morvax lunged. Riven moved faster. They collided, monster and man. Sparks flew. Lirea shouted. The lift shook. Riven bled, but didn't scream. He countered the warlord's brute force with strategy. Disruptor strikes to joints, evasion rolls, precision counters. Morvax roared. Lirea fired his back. The rounds dented armor, but didn't pierce. The beast turned. Riven jammed a neural spike into Morvax's exposed jaw port. Electricity surged. The monster fell, breathing, but broken. The Blackguard didn't move. Lirea looked at them, declared herself free, declared her people free, not under Empire command, not under fear. Some guards knelt. Others walked away. Riven said nothing. They boarded the lift. Lirea looked back only once. Outside the atmosphere, they boarded a cloaked skiff hidden by resistance sympathizers. Lirea had contacted them weeks earlier, never expecting she'd truly leave. Now she did. The beacon pulsed again. Hundreds of responses. Planets awakening. The resistance was real. Lirea and Riven were welcomed with cautious optimism. Not all trusted her. She was a royal, an imperial bride. But when she showed the data, the scars and the bruises, eyes softened. They offered her shelter. She refused. She wanted action. Riven trained the recruits, not with speeches, but through movement, tactics, awareness. Every Terran principle came from survival, not superiority. Lirea observed how his presence changed a room, not with fear, but with clarity. She addressed the resistance herself. She explained the Empire's lies, the warlord's crimes. She told the truth, the whole truth, and then she told them she had fought beside a human. They listened. Some gasped, some cheered. Riven stayed silent through it all. At night, they spoke, not of war, but of silence, the kind of silence found in shared understanding. She asked him if he missed Earth. He said Earth was gone, but its people lived, in fire, in fight, in every rebel who refused to kneel. She asked if he feared dying. He said no, only forgetting. Lirea promised he would not be forgotten. She reached for his hand. He didn't stop her. In a hidden system near the Empire's border, they intercepted a convoy carrying enslaved children. Genetic experiments for the royal elite. Lirea led the mission, not from behind, but on the front line. Riven watched her breach a containment field, her voice steady, her hand sure. The children followed her, not because she commanded, but because she didn't lie. News of the mission spread. Lirea became more than a symbol. She became a force. Her image broadcast on pirated channels. Her words spreading like wildfire. Not rebellion. Reclamation. The Empire responded with force. Assassins. Agents. Poison. Each time, Riven stopped them. Silently. Swiftly. Lirea began to see how much he sacrificed to be near her. Not affection, but purpose. He didn't need to fight. He chose to. Not for glory, but for her cause. One night, she asked why he never tried to return home, to find other humans. He said he did. Once. And all he found were ruins. Lirea said she was sorry. He told her not to be. Earth died, but humanity didn't. It lived in choices, in resistance, in her. She kissed him then, not as a royal, not as a commander, but as a woman who chose, finally, without fear. He didn't promise forever. He didn't have to. That night, Lirea stood before the High Council of the Liberated Worlds. She demanded unity, not through law, but through defiance, a federation of survivors, of fighters, of builders. She ended the speech with Riven beside her. They voted, unanimous. A new alliance formed. The first blow to the Empire wasn't a battle. It was a choice. And it started with a human prisoner who refused to break, and a queen who finally learned how to burn. The first attack came at dawn, not from orbit, but from within. Imperial loyalists hidden among the refugee ranks detonated fusion cells at the edge of the Alliance's central base. Hundreds died. Lirea pulled survivors from burning rubble with bare hands. Riven neutralized the second wave before they reached the command spire. His hands were blackened, his face burned. He didn't stop. This wasn't just a war of ships and weapons. It was a war of will. The Empire knew Lirea had become more than a rebel. She was a symbol, and they wanted to erase her. The High Council panicked. Some called for retreat. Others demanded unconditional surrender in exchange for planetary amnesty. Lirea stood in the council chamber, blood on her cloak, and gave no speech. She simply placed the decoded war logs on the central table. The truth, names, experiments, purge orders, planetary harvests. She didn't tell them what to do. She showed them who the Empire really was. They chose war. Riven moved quietly through the halls afterward, checking defense positions, recalibrating shield harmonics. Lirea found him near the old comms tower. He asked if she was ready. She said no, but they had to be. Resistance was no longer enough. They needed to strike. The plan was simple. Destroy the War Beacon core, an artificial intelligence construct housed on the Empire's capital moon that coordinated planetary subjugation protocols. Without it, the Empire's response times would fall to chaos. Lirea assembled a fleet, not the biggest, but the fastest, and the angriest. Riven took command of the strike team. The mission would be suicide for most. He accepted it without hesitation. Lirea refused to let him go alone. They jumped through a collapsing wormhole and arrived inside a planetary debris field. The Empire had mined its own orbital zone, sacrificing 3 moons to prevent direct assault. Lirea's fleet wove through gravitational shear and explosive storms. One wrong move meant death. She piloted the flagship herself. Riven coordinated insertion through encrypted paths he'd memorized in captivity. Inside the core facility, they moved like ghosts. Lirea saw the walls, lined with containment pods. Inside each, a human. Some old, some young, all sedated, all wired into the Empire's control matrix. Human cognitive complexity had been weaponized, stolen, and looped through the beacon core. It wasn't just technology. The Empire had been using humans, alive, as strategic processors, brain slaves. Lirea almost fell to her knees. Riven didn't speak. He walked into the center chamber, planted the implosion bomb, and triggered the evacuation timer. But before they could leave, the AI spoke. It had a voice, and it used hers. Not Lirea's voice, but her mother's. The Empire had harvested consciousness patterns, using familial echoes to manipulate responses. The AI told Riven to stop. It called him by name, called him by rank, promised him restoration, power, a future where he could rebuild Earth in the Empire's image. It showed simulations, his home, reborn, with him at the throne. Riven didn't flinch. He said one word, "Lies." Then he shot the speaker array and dragged Lirea out. They reached a fleet second before the facility collapsed into itself, a singularity swallowing the network. The beacon died, and with it, the Empire's cohesion fractured. Across the galaxy, occupied worlds rose. The retaliation was swift. Hundreds of Empire fleets struck back, but they were blind, disconnected, leaderless. Lirea's alliance took system after system, not through overwhelming power, but precision. Hit, fade, rebuild, inspire. Riven led the Vanguard division. His tactics became legend. Enemy fleets surrendered before he even arrived. His name was spoken in fear across the stars. But not all victories came with celebration. On Virulon Prime, they lost an entire colony. Lirea arrived too late. Ash covered the sky. Children's toys in the streets. Riven stood at the edge of a crater, silent. She placed her hand on his shoulder. He said nothing. But that night, she sat beside him in the dark, and he finally spoke of his daughter. Long gone, a casualty of Earth's fall. He had never told anyone. He told her, because he needed her to know this war wasn't about vengeance. It was about making sure someone else's child got to live. Lirea didn't cry. She just held his hand until morning. The final blow came when the Empire recalled a grand assembly, a desperate act. The ruling houses converge on the last secure core world, Estrian. Lirea proposed infiltration, assassination. But Riven had a better idea. Expose them. The rebellion had data, confessions, recordings. Lirea would walk into the Grand Assembly alone, unarmed. She would speak the truth on record and stream it to every surviving broadcast satellite in known space. It was suicide. She smiled. Riven stared at her for a long time, then kissed her like it was the last time. Because it might be. She wore white, not royal robes, not armor, but the white of mourning, of remembrance. She walked through the gates of Estrian with fire in her eyes and the truth on her tongue. The guards didn't stop her. They watched. Inside, the ruling elite jeered, called her traitor, lover of beasts. She held up a shard of Terran metal, Earth skyglass, said this was all that was left of a world they couldn't conquer, so they stole its people. She told them about Riven, not the warrior, but the man, the father, the survivor. And then she showed them the truth. Every image, every child, every atrocity. The crowd outside the palace watched on giant screens. The ruling elite demanded her death, but the people, their own citizens, surged the palace walls. The Empire didn't fall with an explosion. It fell with a choice. One by one, the systems disconnected. Lirea emerged from the palace unharmed. Riven was waiting. They left together. There was no coronation, no throne. Lirea declined rulership. She said no one should rule a galaxy ever again. Instead, they built something new, a foundation, a council of voices, not commands. Riven refused leadership, but trained its protectors. Lirea became the voice of the forgotten, not a queen, but a guardian. They traveled world to world, not as saviors, but witnesses. Every time Lirea spoke, she reminded people it wasn't her strength that saved them. It was a human, a prisoner, a ghost of a dead world who chose kindness when he had every reason to hate. Years passed. Their names became legend. Their love, a whisper in war stories and lullabies. And though they never claimed a world, one small moon bore statue, not of Lirea, not of Riven, but of two hands reaching toward one another, joined not by duty, but choice. And beneath the hands, a plaque read, "Let no empire forget. What love refused to kneel to shall never rise again."